Take off your shoes before you come in. This is the Council of Memory, a protected space for reclassified Indigenous Americans reclaiming what was stolen from our bloodlines. Here, we are not just talking about history, we are talking about reclamation. We do not accept or identify with the names forced on us by strangers who did not love us. We honor the names our ancestors called themselves. In this space, we refuse to carry the labels the name eaters etched on the paper. Words matter. Too many people still throw around words like colonist or colonization, and I used to be one of them, as if that covers the wound. But those words are too soft for the scars we carry. Take the Indian Removal Act of 1830. On paper, it sounds like a law about relocation. In reality, it was a policy of cultural and physical destruction. Nations like Cherokee, Muskogee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole were forced to march thousands of miles in what became known as the Trail of Tears, a journey that unalived thousands. That was not just colonization, that was legacy theft. That's why we rename the thieves. You can't heal from a wound you won't name correctly. If someone breaks into your house, changes the locks, and demands you to leave, you don't call them a visitor. You would call them a home invader. In the same way, we call those who took from us by the names their actions earned. For the duration of this video, I want to discuss key council terms with historical examples. I have had recently a visitor on the channel ask, what is a memory maggot and can you make a video about it? Well, I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to discuss the labels and the terms we use on my channel. Memory maggots are people or systems that distort and rewrite our history, eating away at the truth of who we are. Their sharpest weapon, identity alchemy, the systematic changing of our identity on paper and in the public records until we disappear. You've heard the story. Columbus landed here, thought he was in India, and called us Indians. But the truth is more complicated than that. In the late 1400s, the region we now call India was known by local names like Hindustan, and the European term Indies wasn't widely used until the 1500s. Historical accounts like those from Bartolomé de las Casas show Columbus described the people he met as los niños del indio, children of God. Over time, Spanish mispronunciations transformed this into Indio, then Indian. So Indian started less as a geographic mistake and more as a label twisted over time into a racial category used to control and erase indigenous people. The erasure didn't stop at naming, it continued throughout government documents. Before 1850, federal census mostly didn't record indigenous people clearly, often excluding them or lumping them into vague categories like other free persons or free persons of color, mainly for tax and land purposes. Starting in 1850, census takers were told to record people's self-identification carefully, but only 3 racial categories were allowed: white, black, or mulatto. Anyone who looked mixed blood was listed as mulatto, and since indigenous people were exempt from taxes, they often were not counted as Indian. This led to very few indigenous people being officially recorded as such east of the Mississippi between 1850 and 1900. Effectively, making whole populations disappear on paper. This is identity alchemy, changing your official identity, but not because you change, but because the system wanted you invisible. Now, bloodline thieves are a step beyond this. Those who know exactly what they're doing and continue to steal our identity knowingly. The Dawes Rolls from 1898 to 1914, intended to record tribal citizenship in the five civilized tribes, became a fraud magnet. White invaders paid as little as $5 to be listed as Indian by bribing officials, claiming land allotments that belonged to indigenous families. The rightful descendants were left landless and paperless, their identities stolen in the process, hence the term $5 Indians. When it comes to those who carried out the erasure, I call them ashwalkers and the Clorox Coven or Clorox Covenite. I use these terms to identify pale people or what y'all know as white people in general, or I use this term to identify the pale people that have benefited from the lineage erasure of Aboriginal Americans. Now, the Carlisle Indian Industrial School, founded in 1879, is a powerful example. Run by white administrators, it aimed to kill the Indian, save the man. Children were stripped of their names, hair, language, and cultural practices. The Clorox Coven bleached away identity until children could no longer remember their ancestral words, the ashes of what they destroyed, the ground they walked on. Now, the last term I'm going to discuss is memory keepers. Memory keepers are the guardians of our stories and blood memory. These are the people that are proactively safeguarding their lineage history. They do not submit to the systems that were built to erase us. They are headstrong on keeping the identity of their people alive. This council isn't for debating whether we're allowed to call ourselves by our ancestors' names. This is a protected space for reclassified Indigenous Americans to speak plainly, without correction or erasure from outsiders. We are not here for those who insist on labeling us Black Americans, which is a term foreigners gave us to further erase our identities. If you insist on calling American Indians Black Americans, you are repeating the work of memory thieves. If you cling to Pan Africanist narratives, claiming our ancestors as Africans, you are trying to justify Africanizing our original American ancestors, and that will not be tolerated. Pan Africanists often claim the Olmec civilization as proof of African origin based on features like broad noses and full lips. But these features existed naturally among indigenous peoples long before any African contact. Africans did trade with us, yes, but we were here first. Erasing that fact is just another form of theft. In this council, we call out the name eaters who distorted our families' histories and identities. We guard our blood memory fiercely and refuse to let outsiders rewrite who we are. We don't seek validation from the systems or people that try to erase us. We hold the truth of our elders, carry the memory in our blood, and have the strength to protect it. This meeting is adjourned.